kariki. Whakatakatahau ki te uru, whakatakatahau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, he hi aki ana te ata kura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, te hei mauri ora. So I'm just going to hand over to you now, John. Perhaps everyone can introduce themselves firstly by putting where you're from in the chat box. So handing over to you now, John.
Kia ora, Angela, and kia ora koutou te whānau. Welcome to this webinar. In 1994, I was appointed as the first full-time psychodramatist in Australasia. And this was at Queen Mary Hospital in Hanmer Springs. There's a picture of my office. In fact, it was a very gorgeous place. But being a psychodramatist there, when I went there, I was just newly qualified. And around the walls, there were patches in the jib. They showed me the room that I'd be using. And in that, I said to the person, looked like they were redecorating the room. And she said, no, what happens in this group is that people get very distressed and upset, and that's where they've punched holes in the wall. And so we fill in the holes, but we don't bother to repaint, because otherwise we'd be repainting all the time. Now, this was my introduction to the work there. And sure enough, working with alcoholics and drug addicts in recovery was a highly emotional time. And I needed to learn that when they got really upset and highly anxious and highly really scared that they acted out, how to respond to that. And what I learned there and needed to learn quite quickly is what I bring to this to TOUGH program, which I've now been running for over 20 years. And it's, the things that I want to share with you is some of the things within this hour about how to manage people when they are highly emotional. So we'll have a look at these 4 areas. The problem, basically, there's 3 action areas that you can take and need to attend to in managing people. We'll have a brief look at the 3 secret saboteurs that prevent you doing your own professional development in this area. And then just right at the end, I'd like to take some time to explain the professional development opportunities that LIANZA and TOUGH have worked out. And then there's a couple of bonus things that would be useful for you. And now, of course, most of you would have come across some fairly difficult characters in the time. And, you know, most of them, even if they do look a little bit hairy, you can still manage. Even just a few years ago, I remember some of you, there may even be somebody from this library, I forget exactly where it was, might have been Christchurch, but, you know, this hit the headlines as being a difficult situation for the librarians to manage. Whereas now things have changed quite a lot. And this was from early January, some of you remember, and again, some of you would have been in that situation with particularly the pandemic and everything that people have worked up towards. So that the kind of aggressive people that you're getting these days, they're not quite the same degree. You know, it's really ramped up, which makes this kind of training even more important to do. Now, when you think about this, there are two main groups of people that I'd like to address to you if you're in one or the other. That is, if you're frontline yourself and you want some of the skills, whether you've you're new to it or you've worked out a few things, but hopefully there's some extra things that I can give And also in the webinar today, if you are a manager, that you get some ideas to assist your team, because often one or two people in the team can manage the difficult people, but you also want to really be able to get everybody on board doing this, so that you don't have some of the staff hiding out in the back room doing some of the other work because a difficult customer or library user has come in. So that would be one of the things. Now, the other part about this is if you haven't, if you're not particularly good at this, or you've made a, haven't handled these situations particularly well in the past, this is completely understandable. I mean, because one of the reasons is, where did you learn about dealing with emotional issues? And it's most of us have learned about emotions and how people manage emotions in our original families. Probably some of you, my generation, this is not how your original family looked. The background may have been going on, but anyhow, I certainly know for me, I had to unlearn and relearn a huge amount about how my parents communicated and how me and my siblings communicated. And so it's no wonder then we learn this, that when we come to be grown-ups, we also don't necessarily know how to manage conflicts when they arise. So that's, it's okay that we don't get it. The good news is that we can learn how to do these things. So when you think about it, it's really how good would it be if you could work out what to say, what to do, how to respond, even more importantly, how to look after yourself in the midst of this kind of conflict. Now, one of the things about this learning is that it does also need to be practical. A lot of the training that I know in this area, and I've looked at lots to see, what's going around. A lot of it will give you the theory, this is what you need to say to people, but it's sort of like learning, how do you actually learn that? And when you think of it, perhaps an analogy might be about developing the perfect golf swing. This is a librarian, she lives up in Auckland, is a very good golfer, just works one day a week, of course, spends the other 6 days on the golf course. But you can read a book about golf and even have somebody just tell you, you hold the clubs like this. But I'm led to believe that there's actually about 125 different things that you need to know and attend to when you are playing golf. Some of the golfers amongst you might know different, or you might even realize there's more than 125 different things. But this kind of work does require practice, partly because we're undoing a lot of what we've learned. And so, this practical learning is transformational, and that's what I'm very interested in doing. We'll give him a rest. Whoopsie daisy, he's going nuts. There, that's better. It does require to make some behavioral change. In fact, the change needs to be in the way that you think about yourself and about the other person, the way that you feel in response to some of these things that happen, and the change also in the way that you act or behave or what you actually do. So this is kind of like the area of that we're looking at. That's the transformational change. It's not just an idea or having more knowledge is not enough. Now, the key thing to all of this and all of these difficult situations is around emotions that, and first of all, we want to look at your emotions first. And this is the area really where a lot of people don't so much do the work in a lot of the training. I guess for me, having worked as a psychodrama therapist and a counsellor, I've kind of brought a lot of that aspect into it about how you can learn to manage yourself in these moments. So here's almost point number one, is being able to acknowledge what is going on for you. It's about acknowledging your own emotions is the thing that's going to help you most to calm down. You know, even when, well, let alone when somebody is shouting at you and telling you you're completely incompetent and this library is, you know, it sucks. This library sucks, you know. How come I can't get a book? But it's also, even when somebody says no to you, that can be a moment really where something happens to you. And what we do know happens is that in the mammalian brain, there's this little piece in there called the amygdala. This fires up and takes away a lot of the blood from the frontal part of the brain, the rational brain, and so you become defensive. And the understanding the neuroscience is very helpful for understanding what's happening to you in these moments. And so when you know and realize that this is not a moral fault, that you can't respond in this moment, that you say the wrong thing, but it's related to the physiological, let alone the psychological, what you've learned and the habits that you've learned and how you've responded. This becomes very important. So what we're seeing then is the brain under fire. It's as if you're getting a whole bunch of messages that you can't quite process, and of course then that leads to basically confusion and not being able to respond so well. Some of you would be familiar, you might be familiar with the fight, flight, freeze response. This is sort of as we've traditionally known this. For some, you might want to fight back. Most people would either just freeze and stay still and kind of stand there and go, I don't know what to say, or the flight part of it, even working in a library in the front desk, for instance, is that psychologically you might flee from there. Although I have met a lot of people in libraries who say the back room is there, is where they want to do most of the work. If the back room's not very big and the whole staff are out there and somebody's at the front desk shouting and saying, I don't want to pay this fine. This is not such a good thing for the library. I guess at this point, I would like to appreciate a lot of the people that I have worked with over the time in libraries throughout New Zealand, way back even when Manukau was a separate library system. I did a lot of work there, Tauranga, Southland, Wellington, and then I do know that a number of you on here, I just saw Tararua Library have been using our online program, Taupo. So kia ora to all of you. And it's been very helpful for me learning a lot about how in libraries you can deal with these sort of things. Now, the thing to counter the fight, flight, and freeze, or the amygdala hijack of the brain, which is what Daniel Goleman calls it. The first thing and the most simple thing is to breathe, and breathe deeply and slowly from the belly. It's an amazing thing, breathing like this. It affects the whole central nervous system, the vagus nerve that runs from the base of the skull right through the center of the body. Deep breathing and slow breathing affects and activates the parasympathetic nervous system, and that helps to calm you down with all of these things. So, and it's a really interesting thing. In workshops, when we do face-to-face workshops particularly, we do these in 2 half days. And on the second day, or even at the first, but the end of the second day, when I would ask somebody, people, what's the main thing that you have got from this workshop, and what are you going to do differently? Quite a number of people say they're going to really practice breathing, to breathe. And I say, yep, that's absolutely important. It's just when you go back to work and the manager says, well, what did you learn to do in the workshop? And they might say, I learned to breathe. I'm kind of going, yeah, there's probably a few other things too that you might say, but breathing is tremendously important part of that. Now, the second thing, and this is breathing from the belly, by the way. When we are under attack and feel under attack, we can breathe a lot from the shallow breathing. It's emergency breath that we do need, but it's not helpful in these situations. If in fact, and unfortunately some people have been in this situation, if there is somebody in the library who's physically threatening, you do need to breathe from here and get out of there. But for most people, for 99%, even more, mostly it's just people who are emotionally upset, they're angry, or they're difficult, or whatever. And the next thing to do for this is to help you calm down yourself, is to name your feelings to yourself. And there's a phrase there, really, to name them is to tame them. It's so often understanding your feelings. When we have feelings that we don't like, we want to move away from them, is basically what it is. But this doesn't help you calm down. It actually increases your anxiety when you start noticing not only is there somebody in front of you who is upset and shouting, but you yourself are now upsetting yourself because of you wanting to move away from the feelings that you've got, these unwanted feelings. And so really, this is a very important thing that you can do for yourself, is to name your own feelings without judgment and accepting yourself. So that's sort of the first big area. So let's just take a pause for a moment. And Sarah, you've been looking at questions, and I want to just check in that you can hear me, you're tuning in, what I'm saying makes sense. So put anything in the chat. I see there's about 35 things in the chat, so I can even have a look at that.
No questions just yet, John, but people might have some as they take in what you've been talking about.
One of the things I do find in doing a webinar is the temptation for me just to keep talking, particularly because when I do a face-to-face, people will interrupt and so on. But in a situation like this where you're on mute, you might, anyway, right. So is it all good? But do have a think about if you've got any questions that arise. We'll hopefully have some time towards the end.
Yeah, I think it's all good, John. We've all had a practice of breathing while we notice how we're feeling after hearing your kōrero. I reckon time to move on.
Kia ora, Sarah, thank you. So the next thing that we want to have a look at, first one is you're affected in these emotional situations, and the second, what about their emotions? Emotions drive all our behaviours, yours as well as theirs. And so when you think of somebody who is getting upset, this is kind of the area you want to look at. How can you understand what they are feeling? In the pause, I forgot to have a drink myself. Now, the thing about this is that upset people, as you say, they feel alienated, they need to be acknowledged. Really, we can get judgmental about the way they're behaving and what they're saying or whatever, but underneath it, you know, is driven by people's somehow some kind of feeling of alienation that they've got, that they are somehow disconnected. It's quite a challenge. I mean, we saw this on a grand scale in the last, couple of weeks ago at Parliament. One of the key things that a lot of commentators said was these people are alienated from society, and they need to be heard, even when they are talking, saying things that you don't actually believe, and you know, in many cases are clearly, don't have any scientific backing or clearly whatever. It's not so much the content that needs to be agreed to, but it's about the feelings that need to be acknowledged. So somebody coming in to a library, for instance, and saying, I've paid the fine, or I've never had that book out, and you know very well they have, or all those sorts of things. You don't have to agree with the content, but what you end up acknowledging for them is what they are feeling. Now, in order to do this, let's just think about some of the challenging statements that you might come up with. Why can't you let me in? I'm not paying that fine. It's just counsel or robbery. You're incompetent. I returned that book. And there's probably many other things. So when you think about these challenging statements, some of them are an attack on you. You're incompetent. So that actually will certainly get you going. Or I returned the book, and you've got this very strong suspicion that they're lying and having you on. So this is an attack on you, on your integrity. But let's just think about it then. What are some of those feelings that are behind these statements? Now, some of you might be on small screens and you can't see all of those words, but these are the kinds of words that when we're working in a group that people come up with. What do you think that the library user who's upset is, what are they feeling? Now, some of you may be looking at those words and noticing, that, what about that list? Are they all feeling words? Well, the interesting thing is, of course, is that they're not. And I've marked the ones in red that are probably not feeling words. These are actually more, they're more judgment words. But the interesting thing about this is that when we are faced with people who, and we're trying to work out what is their, how can I acknowledge their emotion, what they're feeling, so often in the group, all of these words come up at different parts of it. So making a distinction for yourself about what's the difference between what they are feeling and the judgment words often come out because you are somehow feeling attacked, or you're threatened, or you're feeling uncomfortable, or you're feeling anxious yourself. And some of those judgment words come out really. And as you can imagine, if you said them out loud, they wouldn't be very helpful. Even though some of them you might say to people at home, you're a racist, or you're a sexist, or you're whatever. But by and large, they don't help the conversation at all. So that's not acknowledging the other person's feelings. So noticing that these, that when you do come up with words that are judgmental, check to see what you are feeling and whether you're even judging yourself. And I shouldn't feel like this, or this person is making me feel this way, and I don't like it, and I don't like them because of it. But the challenge really is finding a way to acknowledge them, or to acknowledge their emotion without judging them. This is a bit of a challenge because the fear of sounding condescending, for instance, when you acknowledge somebody's feeling or getting it wrong. It's one of the things in the training that we do practice a lot, and because it's counterintuitive, actually. When somebody's having a go at you, you don't want to say, gee, you sound really upset. But in fact, this is the thing that works. It's the thing that we know works. I've had a lot of stories about it, and from people coming back saying, oh, I didn't really believe that would happen. There's one librarian I remember well in up north. She was told to come to the training, and she sat there with her arms folded through most of it and kind of challenged me on just about everything I said. And then anyhow, she went away and came back the next week, because we do these in 2 half days. And when she came back, she said, look, I didn't believe any of that, what you said last week. I was very skeptical. But that afternoon, as it turned out, somebody came into the library, and they were very upset. And I actually didn't quite know what to do. And then I thought, oh, well, I might as well just try this silly thing that you said and acknowledge their emotion. And so she said, gee, you're really upset about this. And she said, immediately that person just calmed right down. And it surprised her that this is a powerful thing to do. Anyhow, it does take a bit of practice and working out about how you can do it. So just getting on to the third main point. So the first one was about you, what happens to you in that moment when somebody is angry and upset and shouting, or just being coldly assertive towards you, and with strong elements of judgment. So that's what can you do about your own reaction and your own emotion. Secondly is, what can you do for the other person through acknowledging their emotion. But no matter how good you get at doing this, that it does affect you. In fact, I had a call yesterday from somebody, a family member, who was accusing me of doing some nefarious thing, and which, of course, I'm totally innocent of, as far as I can remember anyway. But I was able to say to them, gee, you sound really anxious about this. And well, it's not, I'm not anxious at all. I just want you to like that. And so then I kind of several times was acknowledging what they were saying. And what I noticed was that when that phone call finished, I was really quite agitated, and realized that a huge amount of adrenaline was flowing through my all of my veins and into my muscles, getting ready for fight or flight. And so that I needed time to debrief and just to sort of talk about it first, and then even I went for a good, nice walk in the forest that's close by to me. And that helped me, even though I knew exactly in the moment what was happening, why this person was so upset and how they were expressing it. And in fact, given my whole work as a psychodramatist, I knew the family system that got them develop that way, still affected me hugely. So taking time to debrief is very, very important for you, for your health, for your well-being. What we do have is at the end of the thing, don't think this is bribery or anything to make you stay till the end, but it is, that it's about, you can download, we'll post the link to that at the end, and you can use this both for yourself, that you can give it to somebody and say, look, this is the kind of listening that I need. I just need to debrief. I don't need you to say anything, but if you would just have a look at this thing, and that would be good. Plus, you can also be a good debriefer for other people. It's tremendously important, this aspect. So those are the three main things around managing difficult people, difficult library users, or indeed this work is relevant actually in every area of your life. One of the reasons got me started, I wanted to make a difference to people's relationships, in their family life, but I worked out that I could teach this in a work situation, and people can actually do it at home. So I'd like to move on to the next, the second major area around this, and that is, what is it that gets in the way of you and your professional development in this? And I a number of years ago did a master's in adult learning, and looked at, what was it for people that really got them, helped them to learn as adults, and what also got in the way. Now, one of the things Daniel Goleman, who's been a great influence on my life, his book Emotional Intelligence, and he's got a whole, he's got several other books coming since then, but he's the one that coined that phrase, the amygdala hijack of the brain, which is a useful concept. But he's saying about most training programs follow an academic model. And I think for me, the benefit of having trained as a psychodramatist, where I want to make everything concrete rather than just talking about things, we want to do things. The best I can do on a webinar rather than doing things is at least have lots of pictures. But the first secret saboteur to professional development, if you like, is that you don't trust the way that learning is delivered. It can be, you think, can we get transformation from certainly learning online, or even doing workshops? This is quite a challenge, really. Let me just, you doubt, yeah, so the first one is doubting the delivery, the second is going to be doubting yourself, and the third is doubting that there's external reasons. But just thinking about this for a little bit, when if you're wondering, does this kind of training work? Well, I mean, I myself had a lot of doubts about online training. As I've mentioned already, I've done, a lot of my training was in group work. I was a school teacher for 5 years. I was actually a Catholic priest as well, so I did a lot of front working with people and groups. And there was a point when I was together in my own professional association of training and development, where there were a lot of people doing this or beginning online learning. And I kind of, for a long time, said this wouldn't work. Not with my kind of training. It's all very well. You can teach people anything online, the Dewey Decimal System for all that, or whatever else, or how to, I don't know whether you teach them how to bookbind or do filing. But anyhow, I didn't believe it. But then I kind of got thinking, and being an inquiring mind, I got together with somebody who'd won an award for developing this kind of learning, and said, I want to see if I can bring the really practical action things into the online learning. And for a long time, we worked at it, and I still sort of doubted whether it was actually working. And then one day, out of the blue, I got a message from Wendy Baker, director of New Zealand Coaching and Mentoring. She said, I'm impressed with the pedagogically sound delivery and the quality of the product. And she'd looked at a lot around the world and found, that this program stood out. And when I started getting that feedback, I realized that this kind of training does work, and it does work to change people. Another one that I will mention a bit later is a psych nurse who said for him this was the best de-escalation training that he'd ever had, and everybody should do it. Now, they do a lot of practical stuff, so you can learn these things online. The American Association of Training Development, they did a lot of research around blended learning in particular, so that you learn some things online and some things face-to-face. This in fact increased both the potency of in-room learning and also of what you learn online. So the vehicle for delivering this training does bring about change. The second thing is that you have doubts about your own ability to learn, and this probably does affect most people. A lot of people might say, these are some of the things that I've heard. I've never been good at this kind of thing. My culture discourages this way of thinking. I'm a timid person. I don't have the patience. I've lost my confidence. I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing. I'm too old to make these changes. A lot of those kind of questions that come up around learning. These are things where you can stop yourself from learning. One of the interesting things with this program that I met who's a colleague who was from Bangladesh. He said, gee, you should come to Bangladesh and teach this. And I thought that'd be great. I'd go there and have a trip and come back. Well, we've ended up now working there for the last about 8 years, I think. One of the things is that in Bangladesh, people said, this is exactly what we need, because we get so emotional with each other and have lots of fights. And a very similar thing was said in Samoa, where I did it. So culture, and my first degree was in anthropology, and I used to look at how different people were. But in fact, when you think about the brain science and what happens in the neurological processes around emotions, actually people are very similar. Another thing is, when you're not too old to learn, you can do this. But confidence really was a big one that a lot of people are afraid of and say, I don't feel confident enough to do this. One of the things, again, in the online learning that I've realized is in the Nelson Marlborough DHB, they've been using the online program, and they did some research and or some evaluation at least of, and they came up with this of 53 people that, the first 53 that did this, before 17% were not confident at all. After they'd done the program, nobody said they weren't confident at all. And the other big figure there is before they're quite confident, 34% were quite confident. After they did the program, 74% were quite confident. And a lot of the anecdotal, what people tell us is that they do feel this confidence, but lack of confidence often stops people wanting to learn in the first place. So this is a huge thing. And the third secret is the external barriers that people think, there's no money in our budget for it. My manager won't let it. People in where we work, they won't. It wouldn't work for them. There's a whole lot of external reasons people can come up with why they wouldn't want to do professional development. One of the things about budgets, a lot of the training budgets have been put aside every year, with face-to-face conferences being cancelled. There's got to be huge savings in that area. And so it's just really a question of, if there's a will to do this training, then people will do it. But other things, people thinking nobody will, they won't appreciate, or they won't get it when I try to do this. This is part of real professional development, where you want to put into practice what you're learning, and then you'll find out how it works. So there's a whole number of things, just noticing how you stop yourself from wanting to do professional development. This is not my style. I don't feel confident enough, or there's things external to me that won't allow that. But what I encourage you to do is challenge each of those areas to say, not only your professional development in this area here of managing difficult people, but any of your professional development. That's really want to support what LIANZA does in this whole area of your professional development in every aspect. So we've covered a lot. I don't know whether this is too much information. She did just ask for a drink of water, and this is what she got. We've done a lot, and we'll take a pause, and then just the last little bit will be a chance if I can take a few minutes to explain how our program is set up, and then take some questions. Sarah, is there anything that needs to be addressed right now?
Oh, we have got a question that perhaps you could do now or later. Would you like it now? It's one where you could give an example.
Yeah, go on.
Cool. So we had a question from Natasha. How do we deal with a borrower who is in their disappointment and anger because a reserve has not arrived, or a magazine is not available to borrow? And I'll just put that in the chat so that you can read it again if you need. How do we deal with they're feeling disappointment and anger? They wanted the reserve, it's not available, the magazine can't be borrowed.
It's a pretty frequent thing, isn't it, where people are disappointed in what you're not offering. Somehow you've let them down, or somebody's let them down. Of course, they've had it on reserve. It's not your fault that it actually hasn't been returned, but you're the one that cops it. So the first thing is to realize that it's not you, it's not your fault. But there's another important model that we do teach, comes from transactional analysis, the drama triangle. And some of you might be familiar with it, but there's a rescuer, a persecutor, and a victim. Now, somebody who's all upset, they're victims, you know, they haven't got the book they ordered. They also, now these positions keep changing, and they become the persecutor because you are at fault. You haven't managed to order the book properly or do whatever it was. And you probably by almost by the very fact that you're a librarian, you are more inclined to be a rescuer, a helper. You want to help people learn. This is a wonderful strength. It can also just be, when it's too much of that, can be a limitation. So it sounds a little bit like you would want to somehow fix them. They've got strong feelings, and their feelings are disturbing you, which they are. And so part of it is to get help yourself, but also you want to help them. And then you become overly concerned about their feelings. It's a really delicate balance between, I guess, in the whole area of empathy, is that you do feel with people, but you realize that their feelings are not yours, that you are separate from their feelings. So part of it really is realizing, being able to stand there with them, almost alongside them, and say, yep, it's pretty tough, isn't it? At the same time, you can't change that. You can't just magic up a book and say, look, here you are, I'll print you one. You know, that would be really rescuing. So it's avoiding being the rescuer. We do deal with that quite a lot in the program, because it can really get in the way of providing good service. Plus, you feel it, don't you? And you feel sort of helpless and hopeless that you can't come up with give them the book that they want. So it's quite a challenge, for sure. And but when you do understand how that dynamic works, and you start noticing it in yourself, and then that can be very helpful. Thank you. Great. It's a great question. I mean, it's such a crucial question, really. What do I do with people that I can't help? Well, basically, you just be with them, which is tough. Yeah.
John, can I ask a question? Is that all right?
You can.
Hi, I'm Julie.
Hi, Julie.
I just wanted to ask a question about the point that you had made about talking to your relative on the phone, and you had said to them, gee, it sounds like you're feeling anxious. Yeah. And rather than that diffusing the situation, it exacerbated the situation, and they said, yes, I feel anxious. Yes, this is what's going on for me, and it sort of ramped up some of the anger. And my apologies, I'm not raising that to talk through your that phone conversation. I guess what I was just wondering though is, I have found myself that sometimes when you identify an emotion, it can lead the person to say, yes, I am really upset, and it kind of ramps things up rather than diffusing things. Wondered whether you would mind talking about that a little more.
Yeah. Again, it's one of those areas that you can get quite afraid of to do that, because they will get more worked up. Now, it's predicated on the idea that feelings, and even the expression of feelings, are not bad. And so if you start out with the idea that I need to calm everybody down, everybody stay calm, I mean, one of the things to not say to somebody, now calm down. I was very tempted to say to this person, look, chill, just take a chill pill, mate, you'll be all right. Which is exactly the wrong thing to say, actually. Don't you tell me what I should do and shouldn't do. But so Julie, it's sort of, again, this takes a little bit of practice to realize that, yes, they may ramp up a little bit and say, yeah, I really am, and you're the one that's made me like this, and it's all your fault. whatever they might say to you. So a lot of this is for you getting more and more comfortable with other people's expression of what they are feeling, where you're not feeling it as an attack on you. So that would be the general area there, I think. But what we do know is that actually by naming that, I mean, in that particular phone call, he didn't necessarily calm down, but I know that afterwards he's kind of going, yeah, you know, maybe, yeah, I was a bit anxious, you know, or whatever it might be, or not. It's not my job to fix the other person, partly because there's nothing wrong with what they're feeling. There was something wrong with his perception of the situation, but the feelings weren't wrong. There's nothing wrong with those. Let me just, while other questions are coming up, if I could just take a couple of minutes to outline a bit. So the one last push, as it were. I'm not sure whether I'm the bear or the person trying to stop the bear, but anyway, oh no, that's, sorry, you haven't seen that. It's on the other screen. This one last push. And just a little bit about the training program that we've got. I've already mentioned that Daniel Goleman, my great, he's a great inspiration, really inspires me to make the training practical. What we've got is there's about 5 phases in the training. In the first phase, we just work with small groups of maximum of 8 and introduce the course, work out what your workplace challenges are, what your learning goals, what you want to do, and then connect up. So that's quite an important part. There might be some initial teaching, and then setting a time for the next meeting. After that, we break up into 2 groups. So we're even going to work with smaller groups. Oh no, sorry. After that, you do the online program. There's 4 modules of that about looking after yourself, managing yourself, managing the moment, managing the other person, managing the relationship. So those are the things that really that's a very effective learning that we've got. And then that's phase 2. I've got 2 screens going and I was looking at the wrong one. So phase that's the course in visual. It is all online. In fact, I don't have to send you CDs or anything like that to plug into your let alone floppy disks, for those of you. So managing your learning, managing the moment, managing the relationship, and managing yourself. Now, phase 3, you would break into 2 smaller groups of 4 people, and 2 1.5-hour sessions with a gap in between of a few days, if not a week. In that, you review some of the learning, some of these questions, and the key thing here is getting some practice, working out how the theory that you've come across and what you've learned in the online, how that will apply in your situation. And this is these sessions be run by Sarah or me, and you'll get a lot of opportunity really to practice and feel what it feels like. This is really the situation. And when you can do that in the practice field, then you've got a much better chance of doing it in real life. In phase 4, we offer a one-on-one so that you can bring your particular learning with either of us for 20 or 30 minutes. And then in phase 5 is we've got these 20-week follow-up reminders that you get and practice. So that's the program there. What you also get is a quick reminder guide, a workbook, and the Thriving Under Fire book that I've written. When you've finished it, you can either give it to somebody else or put it in the library or whatever. There, Sarah's got a copy. That's showing. Now, the pricing for all of this is the hard bit for some anyway, but the normal price to the public is 720 plus just, or that would be 828. But for the LIANZA, we want to offer a special price for LIANZA. So that's those are the pricing. This is also on your website. And the bonus is that you'll get how to debrief. Sarah, if you put that in the chat, that link there, you can download those PDFs, how to do that debriefing. And if you need to, go and talk to your manager and you want to give them some information, you can download the background paper. It's a 2-pager there. So now's our time for questions. Any more questions? We're getting close to the end of time, but there could be some that are coming up. So are there any there?
There's a couple in the chat, John.
Yeah.
So Lorraine is asking, what's the best thing to do with a person who's yelling and won't calm enough to listen? Loud yelling that dominates the library, so everyone in earshot is uncomfortable. It
Yes.
seems to be attention seeking. What do you do?
Yes. First of all, you sweat profusely and look embarrassed, which is what it's meant, you know, what the other person is doing. But it really, I mean, it's a hard situation, that, isn't it, really? And yes, you want to make things easy for the other library users. But the first key thing to do is about you calming down. It's almost, you know, like on the airplane, if the oxygen mask should come down in front of you, you know, put your own one on first and before trying to attend to the other people. Because if you're all upset and worked up and anxious, you're not going to be able to deal either with the person who's upset or the other people around. So that would be the first thing. That involves breathing, your naming and accepting your feelings, and doing a couple of other things that'll get your brain functioning so that you're overcoming that amygdala hijack. Eventually, you might need to say, look, you need to stop. I've heard you. But you're doing that from a place where you are a lot more relaxed, not when you're all upset. No, for goodness sake, stop, because that's not going to stop them at all. Yeah, that's the sort of the short answer. Sarah.
Time for one more?
Yes.
It's a similar one, really. What would your best advice be for dealing with a person who's so wound up they're incapable of actually listening to what you might say to them?
Yeah, it's similar to that. And if you are standing there and you are calm, this is going to help them. Part of our frontal cortex, we've got what's called the mirror neuron receptors. And if they see that you are calm and that you're not agitated by their behavior, but you're able to stay calm, this is going to help them an awful lot. And Sarah actually is a very good parent educator. And you know this with little children, you encourage parents to stay calm when they're little, when the 2-year-old is having a tantrum or whatever, because that's going to help them. Well, actually, we've got grown-up 2-year-olds in suits and overalls or whatever else, and they need similar things. You need to stay calm.
And John, you show that through your body language as well as through words, and they will pick that up more when they are stressed. They'll pick up your calmer body language. Absolutely,
yeah. And so, you know, in that sense, breathing is the most important thing to do to start with. Cool. Well, that's good.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much to John and Sarah. And as we said, this has been recorded and we will be sharing it with you. And we've also shared the link to go to sign on for further training with TUF. It's on the events page on the LIANZA website. So again, thank you very much. Thanks very much for everybody for joining us today. And so I'm going to say karakia to finish off the session. Enuhia, enuhia, enuhia ki te uru, tapanui, kia wātia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua, e te ara tangata, koia rā, e rongo, whakairia aki ki runga, kia tina, huie, taikie. Thank you for joining us, everybody. Go well. Thank you.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you.